Today's video is Pinocchio, which is Disney's take on the classic Italian story that has been adapted just a metric shit ton of times. It's in the public domain, so like every year we get a new one. I mean, hell, 2022 has 3 Pinocchio movies coming out. 3! Why do you need that many? And one of them, Pinocchio, is voiced by Pauly Shore, so I think we can stop this? I think everyone's had a turn being Pinocchio. We don't need to do it anymore. We've run out of people. But the absolute kings of wringing every last cent from public domain literature is the juggernaut known as Disney. And Disney's version was released in 1940. Good God, that's old. And our story begins with a homeless Jiminy Cricket hopping into a house just because he sees a fireplace going. And we meet Geppetto, who is a childless toy maker, and Geppetto has just finished his latest creation, a puppet named Pinocchio. And he dances Pinocchio around his workshop, introducing him to everyone. What the? That cat trusts you completely, Geppetto, and you are just betraying that trust. He doesn't get your cruel little jokes. His brain is the size of a quarter. Grow up. Everyone settles in for the night, and before Geppetto can turn down, he must first get turned up.
Oh, Figaro. I forgot to open the window.
So he makes this tiny little kitten get out of bed, climb over his master, and struggle to get a window open.
Oh, Figaro, look!
Oh my God, look how close this asshole was to that window. He wouldn't even have had to sit up to open it. Geppetto then wishes upon a star that Pinocchio were a real boy, so we've learned a little bit about what kind of a person Geppetto is. Now let's get an extra special glimpse into the inner workings of kindly old Jiminy Cricket.
After all, enough's enough.
Couple of things. First, this unhoused cricket is squatting in this home. You deal with the noises because it's better than sleeping under a bridge. Like, you broke in. You don't get to complain about noises in this house. It would be like if that tiny Japanese woman that was secretly living in that dude's cupboard for a year were to get angry at him for practicing guitar or something. And also, that still remains the scariest thing I've ever read about. And also, Jiminy Cricket at the start of everything he's in presents himself as the sweetest, most upbeat creature that ever lived, but will always inevitably lose his shit over the most mild scenario. The dude's got a lot of unchecked aggression.
Now what's up?
Jiminy Christmas, Jiminy Cricket. Settle down. The Blue Fairy shows up and, man, everyone just lets themselves into Geppetto's house. It's like the whole town knows Geppetto gets f***ed up every night and is out cold after 9 p.m. So the Blue Fairy grants Geppetto's wish and brings Pinocchio to life. Sort of. I mean, she really just grants sentience to scraps of wood. The onus to become a real boy lies squarely on Pinocchio's shoulders, and he has to prove himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. Pinocchio didn't even exist a second ago, and now he has to not only learn what those words mean, but he has to then put them into action before he can be real. That doesn't seem right. Meanwhile, Geppetto gets to be a father, and he doesn't even have to fill out a form or anything. Just wildly unfair. She tells Pinocchio that he must let his conscience be his guide, and the Blue Fairy decrees that Jiminy Cricket shall be Pinocchio's conscience.
Would you like to be Pinocchio's conscience?
Well,
Seriously? Jiminy doesn't even have to pass a course first? He just got done screaming at cuckoo clocks. This dude is a ticking time bomb.
What is your name?
Jiminy Cricket.
Neil, Mr. Cricket.
Her name is Neil? That's a dumb name for a fairy. So Neil then dubs Jiminy Lord High Keeper of the knowledge of right and wrong, counselor in moments of temptation, and guide along the straight and narrow path. I mean, does the Blue Fairy know that Jiminy Cricket doesn't live here? He's not even friends with any of these people. I mean, she clearly doesn't know that, and he's sure as shit not going to tell anyone. That'd be like if I woke up from a coma and had amnesia, and they just passed me off to the first guy on the street and said, "This dude's name is Jim. You listen to everything he says. He's your conscience now." Geppetto wakes up when he hears Pinocchio talking, and he goes to investigate who broke into his home. Terrible trigger discipline. Again, this irresponsible dope was magically granted stewardship over a childlike puppet.
You do talk.
Yes, the Blue Fairy came.
Oh, Neil was here? And Geppetto again introduces Pinocchio to everyone, and because of his horrible joke earlier, Figaro thinks that Pinocchio is gonna hurt him. Classic.
Music!
Mind if I cut in?
How about sitting out the next one, babe, huh?
And also, Jiminy Cricket is one of the top 5 horniest animated crickets of all time. Dude's just laying the groundwork all over the place. As High Lord Counselor, my first order of business is to enact the right of prima nocta. If I can't get the toys out, then I'll breed them out. Is anyone gonna look out for this dude's well-being? Jiminy, I know this isn't a moral situation, but can you still teach him that it's physically wrong to touch fire? Uh-oh. We know what that look means. Geppetto? He's busy. So the next morning, less than 12 hours since Pinocchio was forcefully thrust into this world, Geppetto already needs a break, so he sends Pinocchio off to the best babysitter in town, the public school system. And immediately upon leaving the safety of the cottage, Pinocchio is marked by two con men, Honest John and Gideon, who, as luck would have it, already have a very specific grift involving puppets, and they convince Pinocchio to skip school and come with them to be a famous actor. And so Pinocchio basically gets kidnapped the second he steps foot out his front door. You know, this seems like the perfect opportunity for a conscience to swoop in and help this poor lad. And where is Pinocchio's conscience, you ask? Well, Jiminy Cricket most likely got wasted celebrating his first day of employment and overslept. So Jiminy tells Pinocchio to politely reject their offer to steal him, and Pinocchio ignores that and just runs off with them anyways. Okay, Jiminy, you may be in over your head.
I do. I'll run and tell his father. No, that'd be snitching.
Snitching? What? That's prison talk. Go get an adult. So they waste no time selling Pinocchio to the evil puppeteer Stromboli, and Pinocchio is an instant hit in his act.
Go ahead. Make a fool of yourself. Then maybe you'll listen to your conscience.
I love it when my conscience makes fun of me when I get caught up in something I don't fully understand. Good God, Jiminy. So on Jiminy's first day as a conscience, he loses Pinocchio to the seedy traveling theater business, and he walks off the job. And Geppetto is getting worried, so he goes out to look for Pinocchio. And Stromboli is making a killing off of Pinocchio, and he keeps all the money for himself and pays Pinocchio in scraps of metal.
I'll run right home and tell my father.
Going home!
Oh man, Pinocchio is in so much danger right now. And so Stromboli locks him in a cage so that Pinocchio can't go home. And he tells him he's going to use Pinocchio to make money all over the world, and when Pinocchio gets too old, he'll kill him and turn him into firewood. I like how in most kids' movies, the lesson of not listening to your parents means that you go to the mall when you're told not to, and some older kids pressure you to smoke a cigarette or something. But poor Pinocchio is subjected to the doll equivalent of the sex trafficking trade. So many people failed this kid. It's remarkable. Jiminy runs back to the carriage, not to save Pinocchio, but to wish this basically 8-year-old child good luck on his new career. But Jiminy's unable to free Pinocchio, so they both just lay back and accept the inevitable. And just then, Pinocchio's social worker Neil shows up to check in on his living situation. She asks Pinocchio why he didn't go to school, and he begins to lie about being kidnapped by two big monsters, and we learn that lying makes his nose grow. She tells him that she'll let him off the hook this time, that he has to be good from here on out. And you know, if you would have asked me what the main theme was of Pinocchio, I would have said, lying is wrong. And that is so incorrect, it's laughable. Like, this is the only time that Pinocchio lies and his nose grows. It never happens again. Lying is the least of Pinocchio's problems in this movie. The main theme of this is don't trust weird old men. And so Pinocchio is free, and so they finally run back to town. Honest John and Gideon are drinking with the Coachman when the Coachman offers to pay them a lot of money to bring him disobedient little boys. Maybe it's not as sinister as it sounds?
And I takes him to Pleasure Island.
Oh dear God.
They never come back as boys.
Nope. It's much worse. Man, Disney was going through some shit around this time, weren't they? So Pinocchio and Jiminy are almost back home, and Pinocchio is ready to walk the straight and narrow.
I'd rather be smart than be an actor.
Damn. Look at Pinocchio being a catty little bitch. But little does Pinocchio know that this is basically his judgment night, and if he's not careful, he's gonna end up like Ray. They race back home, and Jiminy is basically like a child and says, "Look how fast I can run," and just takes off. And Pinocchio gets stopped by Honest John again. And so he diagnoses Pinocchio with an allergy that can only be cured by a vacation to Pleasure Island. And he heads off to take him to the Coachman. And you know, 100% of Honest John's money this week has been made selling Pinocchio into slavery. While not the most scalable business model, it is very lucrative in the short term. So they managed to round up a whole carriage full of bad boys for the Coachman to take to Pleasure Island. And Pinocchio is befriended by the baddest bad boy around, Lampwick. This dude is like Mike Barnes level of bad boy. So the bad boys arrive on Pleasure Island, and it has everything a delinquent could want. Shooting pool, drinking beer, unlimited cigars, An entire house to destroy? And also, what was the last Disney movie that showed someone smoking? I mean, hell, what was the last Disney movie that showed a gun? So Pinocchio gets wasted, and Jiminy gets offended when Pinocchio refers to Lampwick as his best friend. And Jiminy storms off in a huff again. Pinocchio is a day old and is so trusting and doesn't know what's going on. This is like getting mad at a dog because it won't come to you when you call it. So Jiminy is leaving when he stumbles upon the coachman's nefarious scheme. He's turning the bad boys into donkeys and selling them to circuses and salt mines. I don't get how he makes money on this. He's already paying a lot for the children to be kidnapped and delivered to him. He has to buy a whole private island and fully furnish it just to sell some donkeys. And now I'm not going to Google it, but shouldn't a child slave be worth more money than a donkey? We then enter the body horror phase of this children's movie when Pinocchio and Lampwick begin panicking as they turn into donkeys.
Please, you gotta help me. Mama!
Like, this is terrifying as hell. Jiminy helps Pinocchio escape and they finally make it back home, but Geppetto is still out looking for him.
Maybe something awful happened to him.
Knowing this town, Geppetto is definitely the gimp in some deranged sex play situation right now. They receive a mysterious letter letting them know that Geppetto was swallowed by an evil whale named Monstro, and he's trapped inside this whale at the bottom of the sea. Geppetto, how do you up that badly? Last we saw you, you were walking inland. And so Pinocchio has to fight a whale now? Like, who is the main villain in this movie? Like, you had Honest John and Gideon, Stromboli, Honest John and Gideon again, the Coachman, and now this killer whale. There's not a main villain. It's like the world is the villain. It's like the villain in this movie is just the 5-mile radius around his house. Pinocchio and Jiminy go to rescue him, and Jiminy, are you gonna step in here? Nope. Just gonna let him tie a rock to himself and chuck himself into the ocean. I guess that was the quickest way to find out if that would work. And so the story about a wooden puppet needing to learn to be good now has Pinocchio trying to make his way into a giant whale to rescue his really old dad. I don't know what the specific lesson is here anymore. And Geppetto is starving inside the whale, and he built a raft, but the only way out is when Monstro eats, and he hasn't eaten for days. Well, luckily Monstro gets hungry and begins to eat, and Pinocchio gets swallowed up too. And now here's Geppetto's opportunity that has been waiting days for.
Here's another one! Enough for me!
And wow, he is really just settled in, hasn't he?
We are together again.
I have a summer cottage by the whale's anus. It's beautiful this time of year. So Geppetto is just ready to give up and start a new life inside of a whale, and he wants to start a fire to cook some fish, which gives Pinocchio an idea. Pinocchio begins smashing all the wood to create a fire.
Pinocchio, not the chair.
Hurry!
Oh, what did we sit on?
Oh my god, Geppetto, sit at a chair in your home when Pinocchio gets you out of here. You can't live in a whale, man. So Pinocchio sets the fire to create smoke to irritate the whale, and he got that idea from smoking cigars. So you see, kids, smoking is pretty cool. It works, and they're free from the whale, but now Monstro is pissed. He knocks out Geppetto, and Pinocchio is able to haul him to safety, but unfortunately, Pinocchio drowned? This dude tied a rock to his butt and was walking around the bottom of the ocean for an hour. I thought that since he was made of wood, he could just breathe underwater. And I guess my mind also just assumed that crickets could breathe underwater too. So Geppetto takes Pinocchio's lifeless body back home, and everyone is extremely sad, but also probably wondering what the best way is to dispose of his body. But I mean, he's not a real boy, so would it be weird to just use him for his intended purpose as a puppet still? Like, a lot of time and money went into making Pinocchio, so it'd be a shame to just scrap him. But just then Neil shows back up and turns Pinocchio into a real boy. And now, this is a nice ending and all, and I don't want to be that guy, but this town still has a horrific child slave trafficking ring, and now the childless toy maker in town suddenly has a 10-year-old boy living with him. Geppetto is going to have a rough few weeks ahead of him once the authorities come sniffing around. The only way out of it is to provide enough information to convict the coachman, but do you have any idea how well connected that dude is? So turning state's evidence against him is really just a death sentence for Pinocchio and Geppetto. Neil basically signed both of their death warrants when she granted that wish. Just sad.